If one president can deport immigrants just because he doesn't like them, what happens when the tables turn, and that power comes for his own family? You're about to find out how Donald Trump's rhetoric could actually boomerang right back to the front steps of Mar-a-Lago. So hold on, because this story starts with deportation, but ends with a constitutional crisis that could affect every single American. Trump has long pushed the idea that loyalty to America must be unquestioned, and that citizenship is not a right, but a privilege he can take away. He's threatened to denaturalize immigrants, strip people of their status, and upend the very foundation of what it means to be American. But when that logic is turned on its head, someone in his inner circle suddenly becomes very vulnerable. And her name is Melania Trump. Now, before you scroll away thinking this is just another political takedown, let's get serious. This is not about hate, it's about precedent. Because once a sitting president declares that naturalized citizens can be revoked based on personal preference or perceived loyalty, it's not a policy anymore. It's a weapon. And weapons don't come with safety locks. Imagine a future Democratic president looking back at Trump's own framework and saying, "I don't like Melania. She wasn't born here. She became a citizen later. Her loyalty's in question. Could they strip her citizenship? Deport her?" If Trump had that power, he might say yes. But that's the trap. Once you normalize the idea that citizenship can be revoked, not by courts but by presidential decree, you open a door that leads straight into authoritarianism. And the very first people through that door might be closer to Trump than he ever imagined. Take Ivana Trump, Donald's late ex-wife. She wasn't born in the US either. She was born in Czechoslovakia. And she wasn't an American citizen when she had Donald Jr., Eric, and Ivanka. If citizenship by parentage is suddenly up for debate, then by Trump's own standard, his children might not qualify. Absurd? Maybe. But that's exactly the point. When you turn citizenship into a subjective litmus test, logic goes out the window. And let's not forget Barron Trump. Born in the US, yes. But with immigrant parents? If this country ever decides that's not enough, then even he isn't safe. That's not freedom. That's fascism dressed in a red, white, and blue tie. And someone's already fired back. Congresswoman Maxine didn't mince words. She looked directly at Trump's logic and said, "Fine. Let's start with your wife. Let's look into her naturalization. Let's ask if her parents were documented." That's not a threat. That's a mirror. Because if you're going to run a government by targeting immigrants, then don't be surprised when that microscope turns toward your own family tree. And it's not just politicians pushing back. Culture has spoken too. Enter Eminem. Yes, that Eminem. He didn't come with subtlety. He came with a mic and a message. And in a 4-minute freestyle, he dismantled Trump's presidency one punchline at a time. He didn't just criticize. He connected dots between racism, corruption, and the way Trump distracts the public while quietly dismantling democracy. "This is an awfully hot coffee pot," he began in his signature cadence. But what followed was more than metaphor. He questioned Trump's fitness, his motives, even his foreign policy recklessness. And as Eminem said, racism's the only thing he's fantastic for. That's not a diss track. That's a cultural indictment. Now, if this was just entertainment, maybe you could ignore it. But it's not. It's reflective of a much bigger shift in American awareness. From late-night monologues to primetime debates, Trump's critics aren't whispering anymore. They're singing it, rhyming it, broadcasting it. Because what's at stake is more than political alignment, it's moral direction. And yet, Trump continues to talk about loyalty like it's a game. Like citizenship is a club membership he can revoke on a whim. Remember the Einstein visa? That elite immigration program meant for individuals with extraordinary ability? Somehow, Melania received it back in 2001 while working as a model. Not a doctor. Not a scientist. Not a Nobel laureate. A model. Now, this isn't about shaming anyone's past. It's about the double standard. Millions of people wait for years, go through endless paperwork, get denied for less. Meanwhile, Melania entered the US and climbed the immigration ladder faster than most refugees can even book a flight. And she didn't just get in. She got a front-row seat to the White House. But Trump's America isn't the same for everyone. While ICE raids families, deports dreamers, and tears apart communities, Trump's own household remains untouched. That hypocrisy is not just staggering, it's dangerous. Because when you allow personal relationships to shape policy, when you build laws for others but carve exceptions for yourself, you're not leading. You're ruling. This is where Eminem's message hits hardest. While Puerto Rico struggled, while gun violence surged, Trump tweeted about football players. He dodged accountability and chased headlines. But the problems didn't go away. The consequences didn't disappear. And when artists, comedians, and politicians all start to sound the same, it's not coincidence. It's collective alarm. Trump claimed he wanted to drain the swamp. But now we're finding out the swamp wasn't just in Washington. It was at the dinner table, in the boardroom, in the very people he chose to surround himself with. So here's the truth. If you make citizenship conditional, if you allow personal vendettas to shape national policy, you don't just threaten immigrants. You threaten every citizen. Because next time, it won't be the undocumented worker or the asylum-seeking mother. It could be Melania. It could be Ivanka. It could be you. This isn't about left or right. It's about right and wrong. And when power becomes personal, when it becomes punitive, you lose the very soul of the country. Our democracy isn't supposed to run on loyalty tests. It's not a dictatorship. It's a contract between the people and the principles that hold us together. So if we let that contract burn just to score political points, then no one is safe. Not even the First Lady. The scariest part? Trump's not hiding this plan. He said it out loud. He's tweeted it, campaigned on it, promised to use presidential power to punish dissent, to reshape citizenship, to silence opposition. That's not tough talk. That's a warning sign. And when people like Maxine say, let's investigate Melania, they're not just being provocative. They're proving a point, that unchecked power always eats its own. You can't hold fire and not expect to get burned. And if this video made you pause, even for a second, then you know it's true. You feel it in your gut. Something is broken. But we're not powerless. We still have a voice. We still have a vote. We still have the power to demand integrity over intimidation. So if you're tired of the double standards, if you're done watching our values get traded for vendettas, it's time to do something. Like this video. Share it with someone who thinks this doesn't affect them, because it does. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel. Because this conversation isn't over. Not by a long shot. We're here to dig deeper, speak louder, and push back harder. Not for party. Not for politics. But for the truth. Because when the truth gets quiet, tyranny gets bold. And if we don't draw the line now, tomorrow it could be your family in the crosshairs. So don't wait. Speak up. Stay alert. And keep watching. Because the fight for justice never takes a day off. And neither will we. Sure. Here's the rewritten part 2 of your narration for Mittar TV, expanded to approximately 1,600 words, with a consistent tone, 4 to 6 line paragraphs and fluid transitions, keeping it tight, satirical, and sharp for running narration style. Fun fact. Albert Einstein got his U.S. green card using a process designed for people with extraordinary ability. Nobel laureates, tech pioneers, Olympic athletes. These are the kinds of people the EB-1 visa was meant for. Groundbreaking physicists, not glamour models. But somehow Melania Trump made the cut. And no, it wasn't for quantum mechanics, it was for posing in a bikini on a Miami beach. Because apparently in 21st century America, exceptional ability can now be defined by a spray tan and a good lighting setup. No peer-reviewed papers, no scientific breakthroughs, just a high heel, a camera flash, and a Trump surname. And if Einstein had figured that out in his time, maybe he would have thrown on a Speedo and called it the theory of hotness. Turns out, the ladder to citizenship doesn't always require hard work. It just requires the right husband. Melania, born in Slovenia, came to the U.S. to model, married Donald Trump in 2005, and became a citizen in 2006. Then, almost immediately, she sponsored her parents for green cards. From a small European town to the White House, it was a fairy tale, just with less Disney and more deportation policy contradictions. Because while Melania was fast-tracking her family, Donald was busy building walls to stop yours. And then this week things got even weirder. Melania Trump, usually silent, distant, and highly curated, liked a tweet criticizing her own immigration story. A tweet that questioned how she got her Einstein visa. That's right, the same woman whose public persona is a locked vault hit, on a tweet accusing her husband of hypocrisy. And in the world of Trump politics, that's not just a slip. That's a signal. The message was loud and clear. Things are not okay in Trump Tower. When your wife starts liking tweets that imply her green card was a sham and your immigration policy is a joke, that's not a cyber mistake, it's a cry for help. When Melania's reaching out to the Twitterverse for validation, you know the marital situation has moved past awkward silences and into full-blown subtweets. And let's not forget, while Donald was being sued by Stormy Daniels over an alleged affair and $130,000 hush money payment, Melania was still posting pictures of the White House Christmas tree with the deadest eyes this side of a tax audit. Her loyalty, if we can call it that, comes accessorized with a poker face, a separate bedroom, and possibly a packed bag labeled Slovenia, round trip. Meanwhile, Donald Trump, who spent years railing against both legal and illegal immigration, has ironically surrounded himself with immigrants. His hotels are filled with immigrant labor. His wives have been immigrants. And yet, he talks about immigrants like they're the villain in a low-budget disaster movie. He claims they're flooding the borders with crime, drugs, and chaos, then turns around and orders room service for Maria, who's been working there since 1998. The contradiction is baked in. Trump's anti-immigration rhetoric plays best when it's aimed at strangers, faceless masses crossing borders. But when it comes to the immigrants who clean his toilets, shake his martinis, or marry into the family, suddenly he's full of forgiveness. Because in Trump's America, immigrants are dangerous, unless they're useful, or silent, or married. One comedian put it best: immigrants do the jobs Americans don't want, like pretending to love Donald Trump. But let's rewind to that visa. The EB-1, aka the Einstein visa, is not something you just stumble into. You're supposed to have international acclaim, major awards, published work, groundbreaking achievements. Melania's resume included catalog shoots, runway appearances, and some Sports Illustrated spreads. And while no one's saying modeling isn't work, let's be honest, it's not astrophysics. Yet somehow she got approved. And not only that, she brought her parents in too. Meanwhile, other immigrants, teachers, doctors, engineers, wait years in legal limbo. That's the real joke here. We talk about merit-based immigration, like it's about talent. But in Melania's case, the only merit that mattered was marrying a billionaire and looking good in heels. Then came the tweet. Melania liked a post questioning whether her entire immigration story was legitimate, and whether her husband's immigration stance is total hypocrisy. And that moment wasn't just a digital glitch. It was symbolic. It showed that even inside the Trump family, the cracks are showing. Her public silence is legendary. But when the only sound she makes is a like on a critical tweet, you can bet it wasn't an accident. That's as loud as she gets. Melania, once called the most reluctant first lady, might be inching toward rebellion. Or at least toward legal irony. And if ICE ever knocks on Trump's door, Melania might be the one who lets them in. Now let's talk about Trump's own brand of immigration enforcement, the kind that includes threats of revoking citizenship. Trump has repeatedly hinted that he wants to denaturalize immigrants who are politically inconvenient. Not just undocumented people, but legal citizens. Naturalized Americans. People who've lived here for decades. And that's where things get dangerous. Because once you allow a president to revoke someone's citizenship because of a political disagreement, you're not protecting the country, you're declaring yourself king. Some conservative commentators have warned this is a slippery slope. One even admitted on live TV, "My mother was a naturalized citizen. If a president can just strip away citizenship from people like her, what are we even defending?" And they're right. When citizenship becomes conditional, based on loyalty or ideology, it stops being a right and becomes a threat. At this point, both parties are treating citizenship like it's a Twitter ratio. Trump threatens to revoke it. His critics joke about deporting Melania. And in the middle of it all, the meaning of citizenship itself gets degraded. Used to be sacred. Now it's a punchline. While Melania walked her parents through the fast lane to green cards, Donald was signing executive orders like wedding vows, quick, sweeping, and with zero input from the other party. In just 6 weeks, Trump signed nearly 100 executive orders. That's more than some presidents manage in a year. One of them? A proposal to end birthright citizenship, a right enshrined in the Constitution. So now, to restore common sense, Trump wants to rewrite the 14th Amendment with a Sharpie. Under his plan, being born in the U.S. may no longer be enough to make you American. Because apparently, patriotism now requires a permission slip signed by Donald J. Trump. And, of course, no Trump speech is complete without his signature cocktail of fear, fiction, and casual xenophobia. Under Biden, Trump claims, illegal crossings are flooding the country, with murderers, gang members, even mental patients. Subtlety? Never heard of her. He paints a picture of chaos. But the facts rarely match the frenzy. In truth, many of those crossing the border are families, asylum seekers, and laborers, many of whom would love nothing more than to contribute, pay taxes, and build a life. But that doesn't make for a good campaign slogan, does it? This war on immigration was never just about the border. It's about power. About control. About defining who gets to belong. And as some immigrants are now realizing, even the ones who once supported Trump, That line moves depending on what's politically convenient. Today it's the worst of the worst. Tomorrow? Trump used to claim, we're only going after criminals. But now he's going after restaurant workers, business owners, people who've been here 20 years, paid taxes, raised kids, followed the rules. Raids are happening outside bakeries and hardware stores. The very people who kept the economy afloat are now being pushed out of it. And it always starts the same way. Authoritarian regimes don't begin with tanks in the streets. They begin with paperwork, with policies, with a soft target. First it's the immigrants, then the journalists, then the judges. One by one, freedoms are chipped away group by group until there's no one left to notice. So when Trump threatens to revoke citizenship, it's not just about the people he targets. It's about testing how much we'll let him get away with. As one lawmaker said, dictators always start with the most vulnerable. Not because they're the real threat, but because they're the easiest test. And history is full of people who ignored the warning signs, who thought it wouldn't affect them. But by the time it does, the mechanisms of power are already in place. Citizenship, once a symbol of inclusion, becomes a tool of exclusion. Loyalty is no longer about values, it's about obedience. And while Trump drafts executive orders from behind a golden podium, Melania continues to embody a different kind of contradiction. She stays silent, stoic, designer-clad. Her extraordinary ability, as she once joked? Staying married to Donald Trump. Forget modeling. That alone qualifies as Olympic-level endurance. Because in the end, her immigration story, complete with gold-plated loopholes, fast-tracked relatives, and a highly questionable Einstein visa, isn't just an anomaly. It's a metaphor. It's the American dream rebranded. 1 part beauty, 2 parts privilege, and a whole lot of silence. And as the walls go up and the standards go down, one thing becomes clear. In this version of America, who gets to stay isn't about merit, it's about power. Who you marry, who you serve, who you don't offend. So the next time someone tells you, we're just enforcing the law, ask yourself whose law they're enforcing. And who's protected by it. Because when citizenship is decided by politics instead of principles, nobody is truly safe.